For more trust in food integrity, how to prevent and manage food fraud across the entire value chain, and many more. So without taking further time, please help me welcome with the biggest round of applause our honorable panel members in the order of the sequence. Joining us first is Mr. Krishna Kumar Joshi, Head Regulatory Food ITC Limited. A big round of applause to Mr. Krishna Kumar Joshi. Mr. Joshi, delighted to have you again. Joining next, we have Mr. ABIR MUKHERJEE, CTO Alpha Milkfoods. A big round of applause to ABIRji. ABIRji, welcome to the panel. Joining next, we have Mr. Vinod Kumaar Kaul, Executive Director, AIREA, All India Rice Exporters Association. A big round of applause to Vinodji. Vinodji, welcome to the panel. Joining next, we have Mr. DEEPAK Kumar Sharma, Head Operations, DS Group. A big round of applause to DEEPAKji. DEEPAKji, welcome to the panel. Joining next, ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Neerja Hajela, Head Science and Regulatory Affairs, Yakult, Danone, India. Big round of applause to Dr. Neerja. Madam, welcome to the panel. And now I would like to call on stage the honorable moderator for this panel session, Mr. Pradip Kundu, Head Quality, Dabur, India. Big round of applause to Pradipji. Pradipji, welcome to the panel. All over to you, Pradipji, for this wonderful panel session. And here's wishing the panel all the very best.
Thank you, everybody, and good afternoon to you, as well as to the Synnex team for holding such a big and very useful event. Topic, you know that food integrity, food fraud, everybody is aware that it's a very big and vast topic, right? And almost all the industries are facing some kind of issues regarding this fraud, which is happening at the marketplace. Consumers are getting misleaded, and also it can cause a hazards to them while consuming, right? You can see that, okay, in this topic, we had eminent panel members with us, so we can discuss this food fraud, which is not only in India, globally it has really cropped up to a very greater extent. Almost most of the countries are still struggling how to control this. Definitely, like developing countries like India and Southeast Asia, more cases are coming on food fraud. As also, you can see on seafoods, oil categories. Then you have in honey categories, juices categories. So there are a lot. Always milk also one of the most affected commodity regarding food fraud. So what I will do is that we will just have a discussions with our panel members on the various topics of food fraud, so that all our delegates can hear that this useful informations and relate what the best they can do at their manufacturing level or at factory levels, right? As well as to the supply chain mode. So first, I will invite our Krishna Kumar Joshi ji to take it forward, discussing on what are the new analytical approaches for more trust in food integrity, followed by any latest technological advances to improve this authenticity, traceability, and food security as a whole. Krishna Kumarji, over to you. Take this one.
So thank you, sir, and thank you, Synnex, to bring me here in this discussion. So I was wondering about, what do we mean by the integrity? It comes to the best of my understanding, it comes to the behavioral part of, human beings. So integrity, now you can see that how the subjects are changing from one dimension to the another dimension. So the integrity was being talked about, the honesty, respect, all these things of a human being. So basically these are the behavioral aspects. Now the shift is changing towards the food, and that's why the new terminology has been coined, which is food integrity. So it is a very much part of your behavior, right? Whether it is respect or human or honesty or you're doing the right thing at the right first time, etc., etc. So I don't know if you have looked at the definition of the food integrity, which is entirely different from your integrity perspective of human beings, although it is correlated. So how it is being defined by various international organizations is that it is a condition of food to be safe, of quality, authentic, traceable, genuine, whose nature means the product nature is not changed or modified or altered, and also to meet the consumer expectation. That is how the food integrity word is defined in various journals, in various international regulations. So what I mean to say is that the behavior is the prime constituent of the food integrity as well, whether you are a consumer or you are a manufacturer or a trader or some other businesses you are doing in the supply chain. Coming back to the question sir has raised about what are those analytical approaches which may bring in more trust in the food integrity. Just before this session, you might have seen that presentation regarding, how you have to detect certain adulteration in honey, etc., etc. Actually, that is the part of, the analytical approach itself. So, wherein, the chromatographic approach at the molecular level, the people are talking about. Now the people are not talking about a physical extraction or physical understanding of that particular adulteration or food fraud or whatever it is. So they are going back into the molecular level because they cannot identify by physical observation. So the micro approach, molecular approach is applied in detection of the food fraud or fraudulent practices in the food industry. There are many techniques like you have NIR, FTIR techniques. I need to ask one question to the previous presenter. I'll get chance, I'll discuss with him. See, what happens when you talk about all these new jargons, FTIR, NIR, AR, spectrophotometry, etc., etc. I was wondering whether these techniques are being used for R&D purposes or to check the food adulteration, right? So there is a myth, I believe that, and it is not a myth actually. It is I am seeing in my research and development center also. These lot of high-tech instruments are available over there. But probably I may not be using them for doing a control kind of, testing. They are mostly used for development purposes. But now, like the previous presenters have very well said, these techniques are coming into to understand the various kind of food frauds, food adulterations, and to ensure that the food integrity is maintained throughout the supply chain. So these are the techniques like your PTR MS is there, FTIR is there, NIR is there, mass spectroscopy is there. Especially when I working in a coffee adulterations, so I was using NIR spectroscopy to identify whether I have used Robusta coffee or not, or if I have used some other coffee. You get a lot of coffee in the market, the instant mixes. Whether that is Robusta or something else, how do you identify by physical observation is not possible. So you have to go into the molecular level. So these are the few techniques. There are Fourier transform, infrared spectroscopy, which is coupled with your chemometrics. That is also being used for, not for only development purpose, but for identifying the, fraudulent foods as well. There are many rapid detection kits. Some of them are already approved by FSSAI, wherein mostly those rapid detection kits are used to understand the contamination or food fraudulent practices in your processes. So you can log on to FSSA website, you can find them, and if those are readily available in the market, you can buy, and you can make sure at the source that, you know, your product is integral part of your behavior in terms of honesty, respect, adulteration, food fraud, etc., etc. There are certain techniques which we have used for volatile oil because we are into spices business. So when somebody is saying that I am selling you a chili from X region, it has a different kind of volatile content. So what people used to do is, nowadays there are fraudulent practices, especially on CO2 extraction. Have you heard about that? You know, badam which you are eating in you are buying from market, I don't know what kind of oil content it has. So there is a fraudulent practice designed by some people to do malpractice, wherein they extract the oil of the badam through this carbon CO2 extraction, and your shape of the badam will not change. It will remain like it is natural, but some part of it, oil, like 4% or 3% is extracted from that. So you have those molecular level understanding on these techniques which will, you know, address that food fraud. The other point, sir, you have mentioned about the latest technology advancement in improvement of the authenticity, traceability and security of food supply chain. So in terms of the IT solutions, there are technologies available which are called blockchain technologies. Okay, so you can address your food fraud which is coming from the supply chain through these blockchain technologies, which are equipped with artificial intelligence and like RFID you might have used, you know, at many places. A new technology recently I come across through is the satellite imaging. You know, if you are sending your product from Bangalore to Delhi, in between somewhere, if somebody is going to adulterate that, the satellite imaging techniques make sure that is in the supply chain nobody is going to you know, tamper your products. There is another technology which is called SCIRI, Rapid Information Exchange. That is also IT enabled. So you will find them in US, and I was in Washington attending Codex Committee on food additives. I have seen those kind of practices are evolved over there. So in between the transportation itself, these techniques are used and made sure that the food integrity is maintained at all level of the supply chain. The other important part which I have learned is that geopolitical and economic consideration, especially in this subject, food integrity. So what happens, a group of companies sitting in a decision-making positions in whatever you call G20, G22, G11, S10, I don't know, South Asian region, this and that. So the group of people, they try to influence the decision makers, and they try to make sure that their vested interest is getting pumped into the supply chain. The example I will quote you, it is not regulators verbatim, but there is something going on at Gelpetrol. Gelpetrol is an animal growth hormone. Now the people are bringing an understanding that it is an antibiotic, should be allowed in the food. So there is a lot of discussion happening. Europe is crying on that you know, until unless you do a toxicological study, you cannot approve it. So these kind of geopolitical environment are also there which are hampering your food integrity. Economic consideration, you might have seen day in, day out, people are adding, you know, yellow color powder in haldi, lal color powder in brick, powder and red brick powder and lal mirch, and all those things are there. So these are the economic consideration wherein, you know, they adulterate certain food and then your food integrity gets impacted. So these are the few example in terms of the how to maintain your food integrity and what are the new analytical approaches towards this particular aspects. So that is something which I have learned and I thought I will share with you. There are not many things additionally we can have a one-to-one talk and I can explain that one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Krishna Kumarji, Joshi. It's a very wonderful insight you had given. And you had spoken about latest technology, also given one example of badam oil, which is very eye-opening for a lot of things, for a lot of people. And you know that he had mentioned about the FSSI. FSSI has rolled up a 50 common quick test method called DART, Detect Adulteration with Rapid Test. This, even a consumer can do the test for oil and honey and some other milk categories, which basically consumers can do at home. So this is the booklet which has been published by the FSSI to basically start attacking the food fraud cases over there. Thanks. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Vinod Kumar Kaul, who is basically executive director and has a vast experience in agro commodities on rice. This Vinodji wants to just discuss about what are the present scenario of pesticide residues in the global market for the agro commodity product. Yes, and how you are dealing with it in different destinations.
Thank you. I'll just give you in the first question, I'll give a little historical perspective also before people understand what happened.
Vinod, just to the mic, close to your mouth.
So I'll give that perspective first. If we look at just about a decade ago, no one heard about any pesticide issue in rice. We never knew about it. It used to be in horticulture and other processed food products, etc. But rice was never heard of. In 2011, US rejected some of the basmati rice consignments from India on the ground that there were 4 pesticides, carbendazim, tricyclazole, isoprothioline, etc. So they said there are higher than permissible levels of residues. They were traced in the consignments. So that was actually the flashpoint for what happened thereafter. Somehow in that case, since the number of pesticides they quoted were less, just 4 at that point of time, a lot of work happened from trade side, from our association side, and we got tricyclazole was the major issue that was got resolved by getting the norm changed for tricyclazole in US. So US became stable after that. But what happened thereafter was that EU became a major bottleneck. And interesting thing is that EU harmonized the norms in 2008. All 27 member states follow the same norms. And in today's context, if we look at their norms for rice, there are 656 pesticides on which are listed in their documents for rice. And the worst thing that happens there is that 85% of the norms are at level of detection. To make a little clarity, what is level of detection? Is it science-based or technology-based? Norms have to be science-based, and 0.01 is as good as having no norms. And what prompts them to use LOD? Number one is today if there is an equipment, there's a technology which has that level of detection, so they keep that norm. Now tomorrow, if the technology is an evolving subject, tomorrow technology improves and they are able to detect it, let's say 0.005, they will say this is the norm. Is it scientific? I don't think so. So it's as good as having no norm. And why does EU have that LOD in the second part? Is that there are many pesticides which they don't either allow registration or they don't renew registration for those pesticides. So whatever used to be the norm before cancellation of registration or authorization, they make it 0.01. So that is the problem area. How does it affect our exports? You know, basmati is a high value item. We produce about 9 million tons and export almost 50-55% of that. And our major segment is Middle East. That's the Gulf sector, which accounts for around 80% of basmati exports from India. USA and EU, as you know, EU and USA have just 5 to 6%. That's very minuscule when we discuss 80% of Gulf. But these are important markets, quality conscious markets, value sensitive markets. So we don't want to lose those markets also. But the problem is that how can the norms be changed? Can they be changed or they cannot be changed? About 5 years ago, we had a lot of discussions with the EU, and they asked us which are the pesticides which you think that they are traced in your rice and they should be tested. So we did the analysis. We found there were 22 such pesticides which were causing problem to us. So they agreed to test only on those 22 pesticides. But the problem is, you know, when I talked about tricyclozole, for example, in USA, they had a norm of 0.01, but they changed it after the dialogue with us and Indian government and trade. They changed it to 1. On the other hand, EU till 31st December 2017 had 1 ppm as norm for tricyclozole. ppm means if there are 1 million parts of something and it's just 1 part out of that. So you can imagine what is the magnitude of the problem, how can it affect human health. But from 1 they changed it to 0.01. I am talking about tricyclozole because it gives a very clear overview of what we say, that why 0.01 is not practical or is it realistic. From 1 they changed to 0.01. Now, how many of you know that what is the rice consumption per capita in EU? It's minuscule when you compare it to it with India or Middle East or USA or Japan. You know, when there are 17 groupings in Codex, one of the groups, I think it's 11 or 13, which has Bangladesh as one of the countries. The consumption there is around 262 grams, that is the per capita. EU has 13 grams. India has 150 grams. US has around 82. Middle East has around 112 or something. So what I'm trying to tell you is that India, Japan, USA, Middle East, these are high rice consumption regions compared to EU, which is minuscule, and they have such stringent norms. Japan has 3 ppm for tricyclozole.
Yeah, Mr. Vinod,
USA has 3.
Vinod, we can continue further because with time limit.
I'll go to the second question. This is a perspective that I wanted to give. Now, that is a perspective I wanted to set where the problem is. Now, what are we doing? That was the second question, sir?
Yeah, how are we dealing with different destinations? Or,
Yes.
Or just hold on, we'll come back to again on these questions. I just take up
As
the other
you
panel member.
You want to
Yeah.
go to the...
Yeah, Mr. ABIR, can you just quickly tell what is the general food fraud in present scenario in dairy industries, because you are related with the dairy milk and everything. Fine?
Thanks, Mr. Pradip. Actually, the concept of or the idea of the food fraud became very blown up when China came up with the case of melamine, and China openly admitted that there has been a lot of casualties in that. And from there, everybody came to the awareness that something in the whole bigger perspective is being added just for your financial gains. Food fraud is nothing, just adding something for your financial gains. And this is what has been prevented right from your European countries from 300 years or so, where they asked, as per the laws, some kings banned the use of dilution of wine. But the knowledge and the awareness was quite low, and now it is coming up. And for that, in a country where only 30% of the population is in the cities, and mostly the consumers are in the rural areas, there you require a huge effort to create the awareness for that. Definitely the strategies are there. You can have a QR code, you can have a scan code, so you can develop the industry as per the hazard manuals, all techniques are there. But the thing is, the awareness is always very rare. You generally in the market, you find something labeled as cooking ghee. You can find easily the ghees for your temples, puja ke liye ghee. What is that? That's nothing but a vegetable oil. And when it comes to a consumer who is of a lower income group, he just goes to have that for his household consumption. So that's type of a fraud that is being done in the whole chain. That's, I would say that it's a type of legalized fraud, because they are mentioning it out but not getting, the consumer is not aware of that. Similarly, in quite a few cases, our legal problem is always there, because all you are required to do is to submit a report that your product has been tested in 6 months. 6 months is a very huge gap in which you can test anything. And that too on just a simple NABL accredited lab, that's not enough. In that case, all over the world, you can find the cases and histories all over the world where horse meat is being camouflaged as a beef, or even in the dairy. You can have quite a few standards being manipulated, that your low fat powders, low fat camouflaged with that some percentages although. We can have a protein content of somewhere about 36 or 37%, but the FSI standards say you just require to have it at 34%. In some region that is 34%, so you have to keep it as 34%. But that means you are giving a 5 to 10% cushion just for others to have that here. So these are the general thing. You can have the portable tests also, the kits being developed, or the innovation techniques are there. We are having examiners of that, but that has to reach up to the lower level where you can have the entire chain bound up, and until we bind up this chain, this food fraud is going to persist unless and until we can wipe it out legally, testing it, and that by the consciousness. You can have a database of that. All QR codes are there, DNA tests are there, but the traceability has to be displayed to the consumer itself. Thank you.
Thank you, ABIR. Thank you, ABIR. You had well said, because melamine was one of the biggest fraud which has came historically in in China, where the babies were been really affected related to health problem. Fine. I will move to our next panel member, Mr. DEEPAK Sharma, Head of Operations. Deepak, can you just elaborate what steps can be taken to build and maintain trust between supply networks to basically stop any kind of fraud activities happening in the product?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. So supply chain is the centralized management flow of the goods and service, and all process transfer to the raw material to finished good, final product. By the supply chain, companies can access cost, delivery, product and consumer faster and more efficiency. The key four elements of supply chain, the integration, operations, purchasing and distribution are the four elements of the supply chain all work together, establish a path. Competition is that both cost effective and competitive. The best part of the supply chain is the forecasting, planning and operation monitoring. The supply chain are unique network between business that deal the production, shipment, warehouse and delivery of the products. A good planner should never compromise with on the bigger picture while getting detail and with his execution. If you miss an important detail, and today your supply chain, it will be down the line sometimes month later. A good example of this can be raw material, packaging material planning for a production planner. If there is a miss today, then can impact the finished good production at a much later date. The shippers or top supply chain challenges we have. So there are 5 challenges: keeping transportation costs down, keeping up with customer and industry demand, sourcing consistent, reliable carrier capacity, keeping up with the latest technology solution and demand, and on-time pickup and delivery performance. And 7 issue of supply chain management always will come. The following are improving efficiency, improving quality, optimizing the transport and logistic, reducing cost, enhancing customer satisfaction, improving distribution and matter for better communication. If we are work on these issues, so we can develop the good relation between the customer and the supply chain.
Right, Deepak. Because you know the supply, because as in our previous panel, one of the panel member has mentioned about what do you call this, monitoring or satellite monitoring of the trucks. How it is going from a factory to the CFA level or district level, where you can see any kind of what tampering is happening with the truck or product or not. So that's a very good example that has been quoted. Fine. So I will move to our next panel members, Dr. Neerja, Hajela, to just give some specific examples related to food adulteration in India, its endangering health and business effects, how it is affecting to us. Over to Neerja, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Pradip, and thank you, Synnex, again for having me here. So, I'm going to talk about food fraud in a country like India, where there's not enough food. So, imagine a developing country like India, which is battling with the triple burden of nutrition. You have malnutrition because of lack of food. You have hidden hunger because of lack of essential nutrients. And you also have overnutrition because of obesity. So in a country like India, where an average man is putting a large chunk of his budget into getting just the bare essentials, if that food is also adulterated, what is going to happen to us? So imagine somebody who is, budgeted for that one glass of milk, and that milk has mycotoxins or pesticides or heavy metals. A, the nutrients that are needed by that individual are not going to that individual, and B, there are enough and more health hazards. Look at a diabetic population. India will soon be the diabetic capital of the world. And today we know that honey is adulterated with fructose syrup, sugar syrup. So imagine a diabetic who's wanting to move away from sugar to honey to just get that little sweetness in his food, has actually consumed sugar and is causing more health damage to himself. So I think food fraud or food adulteration is one of the worst things that can happen to a developing country like India, where there is so much of scarcity of food. I come from the probiotic food industry, and we are looking at giving billions of bacteria to people to improve their intestinal health and build their immunity. So these are live beneficial bacteria. They're scientifically tested, and they give you a health benefit. So for a probiotic to really have its health benefit, it is important that those number of bacteria, more than 1 billion bacteria, reach the intestine alive and give you a health benefit. But imagine if they were totally contaminated with other bacteria. Instead of the health benefit, you would have more health hazards. So I think today honey is adulterated. You have milk which is adulterated. You have cheese and paneer which is adulterated with starch. You have red chilies with brick powder. You have everything which is adulterated. So I think what is really needed is a very strong regulatory framework. The food inspectors, instead of looking at food labels, have to look at the food composition. I mean, very often companies are given a notice because they haven't put a comma after the license number, or they have not put a particular, the logo is smaller in size than it was meant to be. I mean, that is not what the job is. It is important that the composition of the food, what that food really contains, has to be absolutely safe for consumption. And I think this was an excellent platform where we have spoken so much about new technologies and about how you can test food, how you can avoid. But I think more important than everything else is a very, very strong regulatory framework and implementation of those regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neerja. Because we are sitting in a bigger platform where we are talking only about companies and industries regarding food fraud, but if you see in a general level, when we walk at a home or nearby the markets where we had a petty business operators like halwai ki dukaan, iski dukaan, lot of fraud activities are happening over there. But still, our regulatory team, state-wise and other central-wise, they're not doing enough to catch hold of them. Mostly you can see during festival times, Diwali, Dussehra, this all activities started because it's really they earn economically a lot on that. So fraud is basically economically motivated adulteration, where there is a personal economically gain to the person or organization who are doing that. And globally, the data says that 1 to 2% market are having a food and nutrition issue globally, which is accounting to around 40 to 50 billion dollars. That means that kind of money they are trying to generate or earn on the cost of a consumer. That's an alarming rate and has been quoted in one of the published articles. And because we Indians and Southeast Asians, because of more populations, this fraud, food fraud can grow and creep up our markets very fast, because consumers, we had a lot of consumers and a lot of petty business operators who basically try to gain from that for doing fraud activities. This food fraud may be intentional, but it is not by mistake. So definitely intention is there. Secondly, by deception also, because misbranding, mislabeling, misadvertisement, ads are given on the digital platform and everything. So that is also one type of food fraud. It comes into the account, and still a regulatory body has to work faster on that, because the food fraud activities, they get novel or innovative ways to do fraud, right? It is never ending. So as things, because any food articles which is popular in the market, people will try to find out how to gain from that product by doing fraud. And with that, I would suggest any more, Mr. Vinodji, you can add anything from your end. I suggested any kind of message to the group from your end. That
I would just say that while dealing with, it's a farm-based issue that we have been facing. Training of farmers is important, and then also knowledge at the processors and exporters level about the whole chain from farm, how the sale is done, because farm activities are not under the mandate of exporters, etc. We have to be careful, guide the farmers through extension machinery. If that is the only solution to mitigate this issue. Dealing with other countries and convincing them on what should be done is a hard task that we are already doing. We have done that in UAE recently. We are expecting the results coming out tomorrow or so. But, on the longer perspective, it's only at the farm level that activities have to be properly handled. Thank you.
Yeah, anything left from our Krishna Kumar? Any final points you want to say? Because you had a very vast reach of experience. Yeah.
No, it's not like that. I just prepared myself. Basically, I'm a hard task regulatory fellow. So technology, just I learned from my team, and thus I shared my perspective. If you talk about advocacy, how to do, what to do, where to do, that I'm open to, you please come to me. I'll explain you the certain tips. As far as the final wording is concerned, the entire technology, especially with respect to the food fraud, fraudulent practices, is moving around the communication part. That's it. So probably if you have a very good, better communication system, be it as a traceability system or a barcode system or this code system, that code system, if you have that kind of system available with you, probably the testing may not be required, which we are talking about. Yes, although it is very, very necessary on periodic basis, because if you talk about the IR infrared spectrometer, they run into crores and crores rupees. So I can, as an ITC, buy 5-7 instrument, but what else if you look at the SMSE, small medium enterprises, will they be able to do that? So we need to find out a logical and a doable system. And I believe is that if we have or if we can develop a strong communication methodology, the process right from farm to fork, probably this food fraud kind of thing, 50-60% will go. And the more awareness is created, the more robust system we will develop, and we will have a better life other than these, contaminated food and whatever, Neerja has spoken about. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. All the panel members. It was a lovely and wonderful discussions, and we are open for any queries and questions from the delegate side.
Thank you so much, panel members, and thank you so much, Pradip, for wonderfully summing up the panel. Now, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for panel number 8, Food Integrity, Ensuring the Authenticity of Food and Preventing the Food Fraud. I would request Mr. Ravinder Singh Jaswal from Merck Life Science Private Limited to kindly do the honors of felicitating this wonderful panel here. Ravinder, thank you so much for doing the honors. We'll start with Mr. Krishna Kumar Joshi, Head Regulatory Food ITC Limited. A big round of applause to Mr. Joshi for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. ABIR MUKHERJEE, CTO Alpha Milkfoods. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for ABIR's wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. Vinod Kumaar Kaul, Executive Director, All India Rice Exporters Association. A big round of applause for Vinod ji for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. DEEPAK Kumar Sharma, Head Operations DS Group. A big round of applause to DEEPAK ji for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Dr. Neerja, Hajela, Head Science and Regulatory Affairs, Yakult and India. A big round of applause to Neerja ji for her wonderful contribution in the panel session. and our honorable moderator, Mr. Pradip Kundu, Head Quality, Dabur, India. A big round of applause for Pradip ji, who wonderfully moderated the session. Would now request all the panel members if you could kindly come front for a group photograph, and Ravindra ji, if you could also join them. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the panel number 8. A big round of applause again for this wonderful panel session on food integrity, ensuring the authenticity of food and preventing fraud. We had Krishna, Kumaar, Joshi, ABIR, MUKHERJEE, Vinod, Kumaar, Kaul, DEEPAK, SHARMA, Dr. Neerja, Hajela, and our honorable moderator Pradip.